Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, genders of all ages, welcome to episode 6 of Alive on 1, the Transformers.cards podcast. I am your host, the God King Lord Zero, and as usual, I have Hawkhammer here with me.
So, you cut me off there right as I was admitting the fact that I accidentally unplugged my mic 3 seconds before you started talking, and that may have caused some background noise, but, this is the magic of editing, folks! But yeah, if this is your first time here, this is our monthly, usually, show where we just go over everything that's going on in the community, with stuff that's happening behind the scenes, and just yammer on for, like, I don't know, half hour to an hour. The times are a bit of a enigma.
We're back from a small hiatus. Last month's episode was canceled because most of the team was still away for the holidays. Then my master bedroom had a water leak and kind of flooded. So that really upended my life for a few weeks. But we're back now, and we have WheelJank joining us once again. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I'm great.
Tired.
Speaking of holidays, did you guys get anything cool for holidays?
Well, my pile of shame increased by 31, and I have only recently managed to get it back under 400.
Why don't you explain your pile of shame?
Okay, yeah, so if you're on the Discord, you're well aware of this, but basically my pile of shame is all the unpainted and or unbuilt models I have for, like, Warhammer and stuff like that. Over 400 models. Right next to Devastator and Core Volcanicus. They're a bit fiddly to mess with. Bunch of cheap Rune Wars minis. The Deathwing Knight Master. 39 models on the table. Good thing I keep a bottle of super glue at my desk. I had to build and paint. A lot of retail therapy. It's really hard to get things into their hands. Warhammer figures.
Right. Anyway, did you get anything, WheelJank?
Not really a physical thing, but a few of my friends came over from interstate to visit me.
Oh, that's awesome.
In the early part of January, which was awesome.
Yeah. The only thing kind of relevant I got, Kat got me the Legacy Animated Optimus. Then I got the DNA kit for it. It's the best add-on kit I've gotten in like 10 years. Anyway, today on the podcast, we're going to talk about recent discussion our team had about overwhelming advantage. Then we'll dive into some of the Wave 10 Beta Bash survey results, and we'll end by covering our future plans on how releases will be handled. But first, let's talk card of the month. It was the card of the day on January 1st, and that's Pounce.
And if you listen very carefully, you can hear Penguin popping open a bottle of champagne right now.
I don't think anyone saw Pounce coming in the OI like he did.
He's one of those guys that has kind of floated around in the back of everybody's mind on and off for the last few years. And then, of course, Penguin rolls up to the OI with a pair of shades and is just like, you all are my bitches. But I mean, when you look at Pounce, like, off the bat, it doesn't seem that decent. Like, if you're just looking at him for the first time, he does have decent stat lines in alt mode, though. 512-2 is nothing to scoff at, especially for an 8-star.
Pounce is the best statted 8-star set that got in the game by a fairly significant margin.
And you see, again, I've been playing this game for how many years, and I didn't even realize that until just now. And then bot mode again, 3 defense, nothing to scoff at. Consistency engine for secret actions, but that alt mode, like, everybody jokes about primary laser being meh, but, yeah, a primary laser that your opponent can't sab arms that can also double up without the need for a shoulder holster or, attack drone shenanigans. Yeah, that's, a bit terrifying.
And gives you a defense boost.
Exactly. It's like, it's such a straightforward concept, but the fact of how much can snowball real fast is just incredible. And of course, Penguin now has managed to crack this guy in the current meta. Like, don't get me wrong, Pounce was still doing some things before, but it was not to the same extent that Penguin was pulling off. And here we are now. He's been involved in some Wave 10 balance discussions as well. So take that as you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Pounce is a monster.
The other thing that's been involved in recent discussions, segue. Overwhelming Advantage came up. Again, Penguin. He kind of started this whole train.
Yep.
A Lost Penguin was kind of pushing, saying that it might need to be banned.
And I'm going to jump in here and say this up front. The team is in agreement that OA isn't in a ban-worthy state, and it still can be countered with a lot of different things. So we have zero plans to ban this card at the moment, but this is more just a peek behind the curtain, I forgot that phrase for a moment, as to kind of the things we have to discuss and take into consideration when we're developing things, because OA is one of those things where it catches a lot of different mechanics, and you have to account for multiple different axes with this thing, otherwise something could get blown wide open.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just to even stress it again, we are not banning OA. Despite what some points in this conversation might sound like, we're not banning OA.
But again, this is just more our thought process, because it is a conversation that did arise. And on top of that, like, adding on to that, like, if we did ban it, we would have to replace it, and we have not had any conceptual discussions on that. So in order for a conversation of banning OA to happen, there would need to be a conversation of what would replace it, just because of how iconic a card it is.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm at a point where I'm really against banning any future WotC cards.
I should add, that does not mean that it is completely off the table. We will review all options when necessary, but we have gotten pretty much all the true problem children from the WotC era out of the game. So if something from WotC is being banned, there better be a really good reason for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All those cards are minimum 5 years old in the meta and haven't proven to be broken yet.
Yeah.
Right. So if something is coming up with them, odds are it's probably something from Wave 6 or later that's actually causing the problem, barring something really bizarre.
Yeah. But OA itself causes a lot of problem for us as developers. It is something we have to constantly think about. It's something that sneaks up on us a lot too.
Like recently, in terms of like how this came up, I think the first big thing that kind of made us realize just how much of a nuisance it can be on the design front was some discussions involving Scorponok and his ability to accelerate OA, because of the fact that A, he plays upgrades off his bot mode ability, and B, has the ability to start with a white utility on from the get-go. So all you need is your blue, black, whatever, and your orange, white, or no, wait, orange, green, or you know what I'm saying.
The right combo, and his focus and bold.
Yeah, so
also
he has a lot of ways to just turbo into it. Now, of course, Scorponok inherently has his own weaknesses, but we did notice that that was a particularly potent strategy, so that kind of kickstarted this whole discussion.
Yeah. And then there's cards in Wave 10 that's also... We're going, all right, is this going to be a problem with OA?
Looking right at Fusion Pistol here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there wasn't a black-blue weapon.
Aside from Unflinching Courage, but that couldn't be put on Decepticons, so that kind of inherently limited the power. Now you have this thing rolling around, which, regardless of its power level, which that's a whole nother debate, because some people think it's completely fine, others think it might be a little too ubiquitous.
Yeah.
The icon combo just opens up so many potential situations, plus, you know, all the additional things that it's already providing in the first place.
You know, I'd really like us to eventually get to a point where we have every battle icon combo on each type of upgrade, because I think that's what it would take for OA to not be a thorn in the side of testing.
But again, that's only on the icon front. The ability text could always, you know, present its own challenges. So, but again, that's more the icon thing. Ability text, always something to be watched, because something could develop that is like, oh, hey, we'll look at that. Let's look at that. I get extra icons or whatever. Not saying that's an ability we're considering. It's just me spitballing what could potentially be something to keep an eye on.
I mentioned this in the development chat, and again, stressing we're not banning it. But I do kind of think it should have been banned 4 years ago. I think it's too late now. And again, I don't think it's due to balance reasons. It's due to development reasons. We only have so much testing bandwidth, and it uses up a lot of it.
Right. Having to consider, like, a saturation of options isn't, like, a brand new thing we've had to deal with. Like, I know WheelJank's mentioned a few times now that as our action pool grows larger, Menasor is always going to be something we have to keep our eye on, just because his inherent synergy with that. So this is a very similar situation, at least on the premise. When you actually get into the weeds of it, it is very much a completely, like, it's the two situations aren't exactly connected outside of saturation, but that goes to show, like, we are keeping an eye on where that could be a problem and how to address that going forward.
Yeah, once we reach critical mass of applicable cards for certain strategies, that strategy inherently just gets better when slightly better options get printed for it.
Exactly. And of course, there's always the fact that power creep is a thing. And as much as we do try to mitigate upward power creep, we're human. Things are going to slip through the cracks. Some is going to happen. So that could potentially also cause OA to spiral out of control in that regard. So
even a horizontal power creep is still power creep. Giving someone more options and more tools, even if they're not stronger tools, is still more ways to do things.
And then it also opens up the door for other decks to potentially slot this in as a secondary win condition at minimum.
Yeah, exactly.
So, now I do want to bring this up here. We don't know what WotC would have done because we're not psychic.
No.
We have no idea how they would have handled it if this issue had been presented to them. Many of us are thinking that it would have been addressed in some way. Again, no idea how that would have happened, but it probably would have happened knowing how card game operations tend to work.
Yeah, if the game was never canceled, WotC would probably be on wave 15 by now or so?
Well, let's think about this. They were releasing about 3 sets a year, so 5, 6, 7 would have been 2020. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, wait, I lost track of it. It would probably be closer to 20, actually.
Yeah, I was being generous. So, like, there'd be a lot. They'd have a lot more cards out than we've had out by now. So, yeah, they would have had to do... I feel like they would have had to do something about OA. Even if not directly. Like, some of us think there might have been a card rotation, or a set rotation, rather. Things like that. So maybe it wouldn't have been enough of a problem for them.
Better, more specific counters as well.
Yes.
Keep it in check.
Which is something where we don't have anything specific in mind. But yeah, that is one way we might even address the problem.
Right, but of course we don't want to go down the rabbit trail.
It's a very good option.
Yeah, reflect damage for sure. But one thing we have to consider, of course, with developing counters is we don't want it to be, like, hyper-specific to OA, just so that way, A, it doesn't become a very straightforward interaction, and B, it has a purpose beyond, just screw that card in particular, which is never healthy for a game outside of very weird circumstances that I can't even think of.
Yeah. At the same time, we also don't want to do a daring escape situation where unless you have this one specific card in your sideboard, you're going to lose, period.
Exactly. As much as Turbo Board shuts that down, does anybody actually enjoy playing Turbo Board against Daring Escape? The answer is no.
So we don't want to get to that situation either, where it's just like one good counter.
Exactly. So, like, reflect damage is a thing. Maybe we introduce some cards that manipulate how much damage is getting thrown around in specific situations. Again, this is me spitballing off the top of my head. Nothing set in stone as of yet, other than we don't feel it is absolutely necessary to take immediate action right now, but we are still keeping a close eye on it.
Yeah. Keeping on the topic of problems with development, Wave 10 has been a little harder than expected.
Mm-hmm.
We originally wanted to get it out before the holidays because a lot of the team gets busy and steps away for about a month or so at the end of the year. So we tried to beat that holiday lull, but we're not going to release it until we feel it's ready. So we've been discussing the feedback from the beta bash surveys, and even though OA came up a few times, it obviously was not the only card to come up.
Overall, I found the feedback to be pretty positive.
Yeah.
For the set, which is good.
Yeah.
There were a few problem cards that came up over and over, but for the most part, the set was largely fairly well received by the looks of it.
Yeah, I think let's talk about the elephant in the room in regards to that, and this enemy. Enemy is the card that had the most feedback of anything.
If you're not familiar with what Enemy is, he's a 5-star cassette, stealth and alt mode as per normal. When you flip to this mode, move 2 damage from this to one of your characters that has 10 stars or more. Standard cassette stat line, that's completely fine. It's the bot mode that has a lot of people taking a second look at him and going, wait a minute. He has Brave, just straight up Brave, and replaces the text to an enemy, period, on any of your opponent's cards with 2 enemies. So a lot of direct damage cards have to hit him, and your opponent has to attack him if able.
Right now, we don't have a strict solution for enemy. Some of us, myself, have pushed that maybe we just need to push it back to Wave 11, just so we can get Wave 10 out. But one way or the other, we will get it fixed. I really do want enemy out. Enemy is he's a perfect pull for the sort of thing that we would do.
It's just a matter
very
of...
thematic. It's just...
Yes, yeah.
Because, like, if cards were released based on thematic, this would be shipped out right now. But, of course, you can't do that, otherwise the game breaks in half. So you have to figure out something. And, again, alt mode, barring something really weird popping up out of nowhere, that's completely fine. It's the bot mode that is the main catalyst of the issue here. And, obviously, there's 2 things there. So you could do a number of things, potentially adjusting that. It's a balance between getting the card in a healthy state and maintaining that flavor.
So in the beta event, Naga played Enemy along with Motormaster. Did any of you actually see his games?
I did not, unfortunately.
I didn't either. I did see Silly Egg playing Enemy.
Okay.
Against the Skywalk deck.
Yeah.
Wasn't super relevant. It just redirected. It redirects Bolt of Lightning, and I think he was playing Puzzle Burst as well. Okay. Sorry, I don't remember his name. He's a new player who was playing Skywalk.
Got it.
But from what I saw, he just didn't play actions because of the Nightbird on Silly Egg's side of the board. So Enemy's ability wasn't really relevant.
Yeah.
The Brave was the more important part.
I guess it's worth mentioning. So Naga's team was Enemy, Motormaster, Razorclaw, Brawn, and Night Racer. And he did win the Beta Bash.
And that Motormaster additional thing, reminder, Motormaster turns off direct damage to all enemy or to all friendlies aside from himself. Enemy forces damage to be put onto him. Can you smell the problem there?
Yeah.
There are a lot of ways around it, but yeah, it's a pretty hard lock. Like the stuff that Enemy doesn't work against can still target Motormaster, and any wide damage or hit only Motormaster.
Exactly. So there are ways to deal with it, but the problem is the overwhelming nature of it and inherently is a bit of a problem. Well, I say a bit, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's the biggest problem of the set, probably.
Absolutely, without question.
Yeah.
Again, we're in active discussions to try to sort it out. Maybe we push him back. Maybe we keep him in and find a way to get him into a reasonable power level.
Right. Moving through the cards, we already touched on Fusion Pistol. Like we suggested, if we change it, it'd be something small like trait locking a battle icon. What's next?
Diffraction Field or whatever it's called. I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Barrier?
Deflection Barrier, thank you. That one, if I remember correctly, came up a couple of times. Mainly, I know a couple of comments tied it to Pounce, but I played against that deck. I don't think like Pounce is an enabler for it, like for certain, but it definitely is a strong card, and definitely it in my opinion, this is solely my opinion, maybe it could use a very slight nudge downward in power level, but that's, again, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Other people have opinions on that it needs a bit more than that, so maybe the correct answer in that situation is somewhere in the middle, but again, this is why we keep testing things, because rule 1 of game development, if you think you've tested enough, no, you haven't.
You can never test enough.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, when the set first went live, a lot of the comments about Deflection Barrier were very concerned about its power level, and looking at the feedback from the survey, it's more of a mix. So it seems that people have changed their opinions based on how they saw the game. The card in
Also,
action,
I will point this
how it
out.
should be.
It will point this out. Is kind of validating in terms of the feedback we're getting, just because if the opinion is shifting that much, there is at least enough of a sample size there for opinions to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another guy that got brought up a couple of times, Rack and Ruin. There's been some discussion on him. As a reminder, when he attacks, he gets to do 3 damage to somebody else. There has been some discussion as to whether that might be just a little too much damage, and there have been a few different ideas thrown around. Some people have been saying reduce the damage to 2. Some people have been saying increase his star cost and adjust the stats to match or something. Some people have been saying let's tie it to like a photon charge style trigger. Some people have been saying he has to do a certain amount of damage in order to get the full 3, otherwise he does less. Because the idea behind him is that he carries the momentum from his first hit into the second hit on the backswing. So it would make sense if he only manages to get 1 damage through that, there isn't a whole lot of momentum on that second hit. EvilGem was talking about it because he played Rack and Ruin OPBL, if I'm not mistaken. He's of the opinion that Rack and Ruin might be OPBL's best partner, which is a bit concerning considering that how good OPBL is. If he gets someone better than Nemesis or Gem Prime, that's a bit terrifying.
Yeah, I played against his deck, and it was good. It was very good. I feel like my biggest complaint personally about Wreck and Ruin was his ability to target anyone with 3 damage. If he swings and gets 1 damage on your character, to do 3 damage to any of your other characters is a lot. I said this before in the developer chat, but to me he feels almost like a sniper, and that's not very Wreck and Ruin.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if the answer is, a minimum damage cap to do that, or some other trigger, but yeah.
Because we discussed Rack and Ruin before the feedback form came back.
Yes.
And I think most people were in agreement of bumping him to 12 stars.
Yeah. I think that's still the case. I think I'll be surprised at this point if he doesn't get to go up to 12 stars at least.
Yeah, he'd need to get a lot of nerfs everywhere else to stay at 11, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So at the very least, he'll be 12 stars, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other nerf to it, how his trigger works. Whether it's the damage, or how it gets off, something like that. The targets it can hit.
And to the point of increasing his start cost, like really the closest comparison I can think of for him is Galvatron. He's another centerpiece character that is able to fire off additional damage elsewhere, and he's 12 stars, so bringing Rack up to that point is not a bad idea just as a comparable.
Yeah. So at least then if he's 12, you couldn't have Rack and Ruin, OPBL, and I Got Your Back.
No, you cannot have I've Got Your Back.
Yeah.
I think I've Got Your Back is really strong.
Yes.
Yeah, that was also part of the equation in EvilGem's deck. So removing that helps to avoid situations where Rack is double tapping, because if you build him in a 2-wide deck, that inherently limits his power a little bit, but of course you get that free untap off I Got Your Back, and now he's thrown out a free 6 damage in 1 round.
Yeah. And again, and you can't hide from it either.
Yeah.
Exactly. Unless you manage to have Motor Master or like a Hollow Matter out or something like that, but even then those situations can be dealt with.
I think I Got Your Back is a card that I'm not going to compare it to 08, but sort of that it's going to keep coming up when we make big characters that we got to test it with. I've Got Your Back.
Yeah. Agreed.
One thing I want to add in here in terms of stuff that we did see a lot of, Broadside. I was worried that potentially running him as a 4-wide team with 4 defense and boat mode would be a bit of a problem. It honestly wasn't. Like, I was having a great time with it, but the deck didn't feel overpowering. There was a lot of decision points that were being made, and from what I was reading with the feedback, a lot of people seem to enjoy playing against him. So Broadside, another like big centerpiece character, or the big centerpiece character in my opinion of Wave 10, is looking to be in a pretty good state. So just wanted to throw that out there because, again, it's Broadside.
Very happy with where Broadside's at now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another very controversial card going into it was Darkspark.
Oh yeah.
Especially because we changed it like right
Changed
before.
before the event.
Yeah. And reception on it is still a bit mixed right now. I don't feel the hate for it is as strong as it was.
Right.
Yeah, I think much like the Fletching Barrier, actually seeing the card in action has brought down everyone's, well, not brought down everyone's, but like
Brought down many people's at least.
Brought down many people's objections to it.
Yeah, so again, we keep testing it just to be sure that we did not just encounter a fluke in everything. That's always a concern with this. But the majority of the set is like basically there and, you know, just needs, you know, continual an occasional dripping of an additional test, just, you know, triple, quadruple check. Because like I said earlier, can't have too much testing. And then we have like, again, deflection barrier, fusion pistol, enemy, rack and ruin, a few handful of things that we need to clamp down and sort out for as certain as we can get. And then at that point, we'll be ready to make a push to get this thing out the door and available as a final product.
Yeah.
And we can start working on the next one.
Exactly.
We don't. I'm not going to make the mistake of trying to give a date for Wave 10 right now. It's no secret I want it out soon, but obviously we won't release it until it's ready.
Exactly.
With that said, there will be another Wave 10 beta event going on very soon.
Details to be determined.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you guys have any idea what should we do? Should it just be another...
Can you hear the dial-up noises going off in my head right now?
Right. Like, should it just be another regular style tournament?
I mean, given the newness of these cards, that probably wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, just to keep a control variable on, or a control on things and not, you know, shift too many variables.
I think, like, people will play the shiny new cards, but running an event that isn't focused on the new set, so that maybe people bring in decks that aren't necessarily built around Wave 10 cards, but are just part of the general meta, make for a better test.
Like, don't label it as a beta event, you mean?
Yeah, because like we've seen the Wave 10 cards against each other. We haven't really seen it against the wider meta.
At least, you know, in a large tournament capacity. Of course, we have been running individual tests behind the scenes, but we don't really have like a concentrated, like full event.
We do test against meta decks behind the scenes.
It's obviously always different when people who designed the cards test it versus when people who didn't.
Exactly. The devs are always going to be blind to something, and somebody's eventually going to break it, and we're going to go, oh, yeah, maybe, no.
Then I'll go ahead and just announce this now. Starting February 13th, we'll have the first of the year tournament. It'll be 4 rounds of Swiss, no top cut, just something short to get us all back in the groove of things. Any decks welcome, you know, all legal cards allowed.
Right out. Going back to a comment on Wave 11.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, talking about things that might be in Wave 11. We're going to be changing up how we develop sets in general. The way we've been doing it ever since, you know, Wave 6 is a long alpha where we get the cards pretty much there and then release it to beta publicly to kind of see if we missed anything. We will be starting our public beta much earlier in development. Basically, we're going to get our cards designed, do some preliminary testing to make sure there's nothing blatantly terrible, and then once all the set's ready, it goes to beta. The alpha will be shorter, the beta will be longer.
So in terms of how long things are developing, it's still roughly the same time frame. It's just shuffling around how soon people get to see things.
Yeah.
It might get a bit faster because the volume of testing you get from a public beta is more than we could ever achieve in alpha with just the design team.
That's also true. This is something we considered before, but we were hesitant because we didn't want to force the community to have to keep up with rapidly changing cards.
Especially with the people who print out the new cards as soon as they come out.
Exactly. To that end, we'll be releasing updates on a regular schedule. Basically, end of the month, that gets updated. That way, you also don't need to check, you know, was it updated today? Was it updated today? Was it updated today? all updates will be end of the month.
Would that be something announced in this podcast?
Absolutely. We'll make the changes at the end of the month. Then a couple of days later, the podcast will go up and we'll discuss them and go into details about them. All right, next episode. We'll talk about stuff. I don't know. You tell me. What do you want me to talk about?
Cup is the most broken card in the game. Don't at me.
I mean, honestly, I really like my Cup Optimus healing deck.
Oh boy.
That's so fun. It's not good. It's not a good deck. But it's such an annoying deck to play against.
I will say this next episode, if we have, development or release news on Wave 10, that'll be the primary focus. But if we don't, maybe we just do our crap deck that we cannot stop loving hour or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, we'll probably we'll have results from the upcoming, or we'll be midway through the just announced tournament. So we'll have that to discuss. And then hopefully shortly after that, we'll have Wave 11 and Wave 10 out.
Righto.
All right, everyone. Until next time, Poodles.
Peace out.